Hello, everybody. This is Nick Latero, Professor of Information Technology and Computer Science, Lakeland Community College, and this is Network Forensics. As mentioned in other videos, fundamentally, network forensics is about looking at logs. What happened, and actually, all of forensics is what happened and how can we trace what happened. And in other videos, we explain Zeke and the Zeke logs and stuff like that. And these videos, again, are not about Zeke; they are about looking at particular logs. Now, a good portion of our traffic is done through web pages, downloading files, making connections, watching videos. And if we think about that, yeah, the internet has become our backbone, but HTTPS, which is the protocols that we use for web pages have become our mechanism to retrieve information or find particular information. If we were to go back 20, 30 years ago, we might dedicate entire file servers to downloading files, and we would have to use protocols like FTP, File Transfer Protocol. And we've kind of obfuscated that. If you took programming logic with me, shameless plug there, we talk a lot about obfuscation. Obfuscation is hiding the internal um, intricacies of a particular event. And we rely upon that heavily with HTTP. Got the web pages, but we want those web pages to do other things. Now, in other videos, we talked about connections, we talked about DNS, we talked about DHCP. Let's talk about the logs. Let's look at the logs for HTTP or HTTPS. Basically, let's look at the logs associated with web browsing. Now, fundamentally, there's a lot going on there. Not getting into JavaScripts or things like that. Fundamentally, a browser sends a GET request to a web page. So the computer, the client, makes some kind of connection to the web server. And then once it makes that connection to the web server, the browser initiates a GET command. Get me those web pages, right? The web server provides a response. Sure, here you go, right? So let's take a look at our log files. All right, let's inspect the HTTP log. As I've mentioned in other videos, but I just want to make these videos somewhat independent of each other, we always start with a timestamp. This is a Unix timestamp where it gives the date and time and stuff like that. And we can easily look that up with a Linux command and stuff like that. Again, I think it's June something 2020 from previous videos. We have a unique ID. These are how this particular event is logged. And you can see it can get into many, many events. Think about all the events on any given network. So this particular event is a HTTP GET, right? And that's somewhat important here. We've established the connection, right? We went through a DNS process. We established a connection. This is actually the browser traffic connecting to the server and saying, get me that page. So the client is 192.168.476. The responder is 31.3.245.133. It is using the port 80, well-known port 80, and you will notice that here we go. It is a GET command. The host name happens to be testmyids.com. All right, some personal, not personal, but some relevant information on this particular thing. Think about how this particular environment, Zeke, is collecting this data. It's collecting it on my network. So we're assuming that Zeke is gathering this information in a passive approach and providing the logs. Now, the server is not that spectacular. The log files that are associated with the server are what's coming back. So Zeke is grabbing that information as it's coming back. There's not a whole heck of a lot here. There is basically date and timestamps, but there is something I wanted to point out, and it's not so much a forensics thing. It's a little forensics thing. This right here. server nginx slash 1.6, 16.1, right? What that is telling me is if I go up here, nginx is advanced load balancing web server and reverse proxy server. It is I'm not really talking directly to a specific server. I am probably talking to a server farm to help with load balancing and stuff like that. You'll notice that this is an open source environment too. So I am talking to a server farm. Now, I don't know that. On the browser side, I just want to talk to a particular web page. But I could literally be talking to a whole bunch of servers. So that little tidbit of information, that's more of a little bit of a networking geek type thing, not Zeke, but geek, where it says, okay, that particular environment responded back to me. So HTTP, we've established a connection. On the client side, we say get the web page. On the receiver side, we respond to that get, and this is the traffic that we're particularly going. You'll notice with the HTTP log, we're not really looking at web pages and content. These are just initial logs. Now, really think about that. How much is too much when it comes to logs? We can't log every single web page and byte that's going across our network. That would be extremely impractical. But we do in the networking world, we love logs concerning connections, disconnections, what servers we're going to, what services we're going to. But the actual content, do we need a log file? Let's say I'm going up to YouTube and I'm downloading a 4K, I'm streaming a 4K video. Now, it would be nice to know in my log files, hey, he's streaming this particular video, but I don't need to register every single byte of that streaming video. And that's what we sometimes we see in logs that can be a little frustrating for people. They're expecting a second by second log of what's going on in their network. That's just not practical. So we've looked at a couple log files already, and now we're looking at services here. So that being said, let's go and learn something.